You know when you just meet somebody and it's a click? The woman we have on the show today, her and I had the most beautiful click that there is to click. It was like snaps all over, sparklies everywhere. She walks into bamboo. At first I was like, we'll see how this tour goes. You never know when somebody comes in for a tour. We get to the end of the tour and we end up talking and sharing our life, and I end up crying, and it's this whole thing, and it was this beautiful magical connection. And ever since, she's been just saying, I found my sparkly people. You know that feeling? Yeah, this is that, and you're going to see that today, and I'm so excited for you to do that. Welcome back, everybody, to the Let's Glow Show. It's Amanda Sweet, the Creative Fairy Godmother, and we help people get fly, make friends, and save the world through community. And every single week on the show, we do that by talking to creative entrepreneurs or people in the creative spirit about their journeys and how they got there, and all of the trials and tribulations and learning and lessons, so that you can take it with you too and know that you're not alone in your journey. So welcome back to the show, and welcome our guest today, Tara Sievers-Hunt.
Hello.
My sparkly person to the show. Okay, so normally I'll give a little bit of info about the person, but Tara,
Yes.
today is in a very beautiful space. And you've been kind of coaching me on like, okay, well, I'm in a transition. I don't know if I'm ready. I'm putting your business out there. I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm at the right place to be interviewed. And I've been saying since day one, yes, you are. Yes, you are. There are people in the same or finding themselves in spaces like yours. So tell everybody what you do, what you did, and where you're going.
Sure. So speaking to that, yeah, I'm in the midst of journey, and it's very vulnerable to share journey. And when I watch the amazing episodes you've done before, I'm like, oh, these are brilliant people that know what they're doing, and they're out there with their mission. And I'm still kind of figuring it out, transitioning from what I feel like is a whole other career, although I'm learning that there's many more connections than I give it credit for. So I am moving into work as a narrativist. Which I'll talk about what that means to me in a minute. But I have come from a career that was very heavily settled in performance. Specifically, I trained in opera singing. I'm a pianist. I'm a choral conductor, so professional musician. I'm also in education. So my PhD is in the realm of educational psychology. I was a professor at Marygrove College until it closed. That is where I sat. I have been in front of students. I have been in front of audiences for years and years and years. And Marygrove closed. I finished my PhD. I love singing, but I just came to that point where I'm like, I think I've done the musicking I feel called to do right now. Mm-hmm. And just with how the world has been for, 5+ years, I really have stepped into story. And my dissertation actually ended up being digital ethnodrama. So it was a research play. And I transformed, alongside my 9 participants who are my former students from Marygrove, transformed their interviews into monologues and spoken word choruses and a 313 music mixtape. And I just lit up and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to engage in narrative, both through creative works and working with people. So I'm coming into Narrativist, and I have a business card now, and I'm trying to figure out what all this means. The business card was huge thing to get one and pass it out. I'm ready for my second iteration because things have changed on it.
Yes.
But yeah.
But you're doing the work. You're in it. Mm-hmm. You're participating in the transition.
Yes.
I want to just like chew on all of that a little bit, because when we met, I was like, oh, what you're doing makes so much sense. This transition is totally in alignment. And you're like, huh? Like, I feel like I need to drop everything I know, start from scratch. And I'm like, no, like you already have all the ingredients. You have cooked dishes. Like you don't have to make the turkey and the mashed potatoes. It's like all this stuff is done. And you never really start over. You can't like erase the knowledge that you have. Can you talk a little bit about that transition from, because I've been there. And I say this to everybody. I'm like, I've had so many titles. I've had so many names. I've been so many things, but I've always been me here at the end of it all. And that through line is you. So how did you get from, I'm in this education space, I'm in this performative space, to what's the to Narrativist because there's a big space there that people don't like to talk about.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing was credentials, because I came from two heavily credentialed and or specific track to get there fields. So training as a classical singer, I went to Oberlin College Conservatory. So it was very conservatory mindset. And it was, you start training at a particular time and you learn theory and you come here and then you go get the master's in it and then you do training programs. And there's kind of an expected path, and there's very specific credentials to put yourself out there as a classical singer, as an opera singer. There's things that people want to see. Similar to education, you need to have the education degree, and then you get certified, and then you have your teaching experiences, and you get your master's, and then maybe you get your doctorate. And again, there's very specific things that you need to have to be able to truly call yourself an educator, at least if you want to work in institutions. And I would call opera an institution as well. It's very conserve and protect. And so stepping into, now I'm going to be talking about narratives, it was this, but I don't have a specific degree in that. What do I do? And I actually went into this cycle of, I just started picking up certificates. So I did a certificate in narrative therapy. I did a certificate in digital storytelling, because I was searching for those credentials. And my husband and a couple of my friends finally intervened, and they were like, step back from the credentials, just trust yourself. And so when I wandered into bamboo, because it was really my husband going, get out of the house. I worked for a company called Write the Damn Dissertation. That was my transition job, helping women to finish up their doctorates. And I was at home, and I was, pandemic, and then I kept working at home. And he's like, I need you out in the world again. Go find a co-working space. Stumbled into bamboo. And that was the moment that you met me.
Like I can see it. You're like coming out of the house. You're like, where are the humans?
Yeah.
I totally, this like journey through the dark, like certificate woods. I've been there,
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm not enough until I have a comma or a couple letters after my name. And I had to fight through that too. Like going through, my parents always said, get a degree, get a degree. My mom's family's from the Philippines. So my Lola, my Lolo, they would always just, every time we sat down to talk, it was always get your education, be independent. Get your education, be independent. Those were the only two options. And I went through college. It took me over 8 years to graduate. And it was just like this start, stop, because I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to do this because if I don't do this, I won't be successful. So getting into this creative space where we're making our own lane, essentially, we're building it ourselves. It was really hard to break out of that. Like, oh, I will never be successful unless I have a degree in this, but this doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
So how did you break through that? Other than like your family, your partners being like, get the F out, go somewhere.
I think a huge part, and I don't want to sit here and, market bamboo, but getting around people who are also doing the scary thing is huge. And I have amazing supportive friends in my life, but coming to bamboo, where I had the opportunity to meet a collection of women, I joined the solopreneurs group, which meets every Thursday. If you're a bamboo person, they're awesome.
Yeah.
And we just talk about journey and our successes and our struggles, and being around women who had been a part of corporations, of institutions, of formal organizations, and then said, did that, I want to do my own thing. I'm tired of being in a box and only getting to do about 25, maybe % of what I want to do, what I feel called to do. That was really empowering. And so it gave me that permission. So in education, we talk about agency and self-efficacy. So agency is your ability to do the thing. I know that I can sing a song. I know that I can physically step onto a stage, get onto a stage and sing a song in front of people. But self-efficacy, part of that is the emotion part of being able to, being allowed to, having permission to. And that is another huge part of it. It's not just I can sing a song in front of an audience. It's I have permission to, I'm allowed to, I belong up here. And so I had all of the agency, it was the self-efficacy of, okay, I'm allowed to explode what people have known as my professional story. And I'm allowed to create something new for myself, even in my 40s. So
Yeah.
that has been a huge thing to celebrate. So really, truly, the big thing were the people. Yeah.
I mean, and that has so much influence on everything. Had I known about co-working before, and I talk about co-working a lot on the show because a lot of the people I meet, a lot of people in my social circle, a lot of the entrepreneurs I know, I met at Bamboo, but I have been working remote for 4 years before, not 4 years, 3 years before the pandemic. So 3 years before the pandemic, then we're into the pandemic. I didn't know what a co-working space was. I was going to the library, I was going to coffee shops. I was trying to connect with people and was struggling to find a community. And the craziest part was like, I had spoken at a co-working space. I didn't know what it was, a co-working space. I didn't know what they were doing. I was like, oh, they do workshops, they do events. I didn't really know what a co-working space was. But I urge people that are like feeling siloed in their house or alone in their work or within their social circle, they just don't understand what you're doing if you're building something new or creating a business, to put yourself in a room full of business owners, because it changes everything. Like before that, I was like, all of my friends are like, I don't really get what you're doing. I don't really understand. You're never going to make any money. What is the point? Like, why are you throwing all your money away? That energy,
Yeah.
valid. I get it. I understand where it comes from. I know it's from love. But if you go every single day into that, you're probably going to quit, right? Like,
Yeah.
because that's the narrative that you're hearing. But if you plop yourself in a room full of everybody that's trying and also fighting those beautiful, lovely people, but they're demons,
Yeah.
like, we're going to be like, let's do it. Let's try it. Let's do this. Let's do that. Love that idea. So much different. So, speaking about narrative, let's talk a little bit about what being a narrativist is. You're the first person I ever heard that from. And I was like, okay, narrativist is Tara. Got it. Cool.
Yeah. Story is everything. How we story things. We story ourselves. Goff talks about the performative self, about what we choose to wear, how we choose, the voice we choose to use. So if I'm going to talk down here, that gives a very particular identity. Or if I talk up here, it's a very particular, and how fast I speak. And so finding your voice, finding your place, it's all storied, and there are innate parts of us, and that's that authenticity part, which I would love to get to, is, because it's very fraught. Like, what does it mean to be authentic? I think we
Right.
all need to, it's like a philosophy, like aesthetics, you have to come to it. But everything is storied, and we story ourselves, we story others, we story each other. Cultures and societies are storied, and it's those stories that help us as humans figure out who we are and share who we are. It's how we track history. It's just absolutely everything. And I've always loved story. I started writing a novel, a science fiction novel, when I was 12. I was always writing poetry, and writing was something that just came naturally to me. I couldn't stop reading. I'm sure many of us were underneath the covers with the flashlight, reading whatever book. But the funny thing is, I didn't get praised for my writing. I got praised for my music. I got praised for my piano playing, my singing. And so I pursued that as an art because that is what people encouraged me to do. But I didn't receive much encouragement in my writing. So it was always kind of a secret friend that was over here. And as I stumbled into writing some plays and musicals and operas kinds of things. People had projects that I had joined, and I suddenly found myself using this secret skill. And
Yeah.
I loved the literal storytelling part. And then as I got into research, I started to see, oh, story can be data. So the stories that my participants were in my dissertation were telling me about, they were telling their journeys into becoming professional musicians, their professional musicianhood, this identity. And I saw how these stories could help inform others who were going through the same journey, because we resonate, right? You and I might not have the exact same story, but if you're sharing a story and I go, I have a similar story like that, and we connect. So it's connection, it's self-identity. It's also in business. So how we want to sell our object or our service, how we story those things are so huge. I'm into Fraser tea, which is actually a local Michigan blender of teas. And I was at a coffee shop. I liked their creme Earl Grey, so I decided to order some. And I went to the website and it's talking, they have we're three brothers with very different careers and we've done this. The packaging was beautiful. It had a personalized note, welcome to the Fraser family. We've included another little sampler. It was such a welcoming in.
Yeah.
And that itself is a story of what they're telling of who they are and their pride in their product. So I just love all the places to see story. And I seem to have an innate ability to really be able to take a story all the way through to beginning to end in a way that will grab audiences. That's the performer side of me.
Yeah.
And the writer side, I suppose. And also I love the telling of stories. You know, you and I worked together a little bit of, you know, how does a story get from A to F? And what is the voice I'm going to use? What are the inflections? Where the pauses go so that audiences can breathe and think? All of those things I just love. So I'm finding ways to craft narratives and to help people understand their narratives and build ones that will connect them with their audiences or their clients or their friends or whoever it is a little better.
I still talk about that session that we did, which we need to do more.
Okay.
Whenever we're both in aligned and the timing lines up.
Mhm.
But that one session, which was crazy because we talked, you came to Bamboo, we talked.
Mhm.
I was like, I would love it if you could help me with speaking. I want to speak more. I want to keynote more. I'm emceeing a lot, but how do I get from MC to keynote speaker? How do I turn this hobby or this thing that people voluntold me to do into a business? And we sat down. You're like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but we'll figure it out. We sat down and I was like, oh, she knows what she's doing. She knows what she's doing. You came with a worksheet. We did breathing exercises. We did tone exercises.
Mhm.
I haven't done anything like that since high school choir. And it wasn't even nearly as in depth and like straight to it the way that we did in like 60 minutes.
Mhm.
You asked me to use my whole voice, and we did some breathing exercises to like breathe into my diaphragm, get out of my chest, use my whole voice, both, you know, up here, down here. I had an emotional, visceral reaction to that.
Yeah.
And I have no idea where that came from. Like I like clammed up, I like got choked up. And we, you know, and you were like, it's scary to use your whole voice. And all of these things in my brain started coming to me, like people saying my voice was too low or too this or too loud or too whatever. I speak too quickly, you know, and all of these like things came to mind. I'm like, okay, we're up against a lot of other people's shit, basically,
Yeah.
and mine that we got to break through. But it was intense. It was magical. And that's why when you came to me, you're like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm in this transition. But all of that was opera work, performance work, all of the work that you've done thus far, we're just transitioning it to a new space. But that was powerful. I just want to talk about that session.
I'm so glad. Yeah. So there's two quick things I want to say. One, I'm going to tell you what they are because I'm going to forget them.
Yeah.
My brain. So one is talking about the narratives of others that are put upon us. So I want to return to that. That's an important part of it. But that session with you was also a huge transformative moment because I didn't think I knew what I was doing. And then all of a sudden I took all of the things that I know how to do and remixed them in a different way. It's like I had been making kind of the standard cakes.
Yep.
And then I was like, I don't know how to make this particular cake. Oh, I have the ingredients and this is similar to this, because what I was really doing all of this time working with singers, it's not just teaching them to sing a song and to be a character on stage. That's one layer. But then they also need to understand their voice because we all have a very unique instrument. It's our first instrument that we use and it's very personal. I can't trade this out. So we have a piano in the other room. If we don't like that piano and we happen to have the money, we could get a new piano, right? I break my guitar, I could borrow somebody else's guitar. This is always ours from birth till death, and we travel with it, and it changes with us across time. So your voice when you're 10 or 20 or 40 or 80, it changes along the way, and you have to get to know it again, and you have to get to know how it functions. And so much of the speaking that we do today is contained. You know, when we think about, oh, I have to put my voice into this little microphone, or I'm just having conversation, but to use your full voice to fill up a concert hall, because opera singers don't use microphones. Yeah. Opera, anytime you go and hear a classical singer, an opera singer, unless it's the 3 tenors in the big stadiums because they had to, but in a concert hall that's designed for that, we align our breath and our resonance and our articulation in such a way that it hits the very back seat and comes back to us in a powerful way. And that's the full human voice. And we don't use it as much. So yeah, there's a huge emotional response that comes. But then the other part of it, and I actually remembered, so I'm going to tie it back around, is as you're working with people's voices, they come with ideas of what singing is, of what my voice should be. Someone has told them they sing too loud in choir and they should sing softer. Somebody told them they don't sing in tune. They're in love with Taylor Swift, and so they want to sound exactly like Taylor Swift. And going through those, it's almost like it's therapeutic. It's not therapy, but it's therapeutic to go through and to say, well, if we just made this sound, what would this be like? So a lot of times I'll use metaphors such as color. I don't know if we did that, but I'll say, sing or speak in blue. Now do purple. Now do green. Which one felt the best? And the colors are whatever, right? So if we decide that you speak best in green, it's not that other people go, oh, she speaks green. Yeah. There's something, green means something to you. It is storied to you. It evokes a certain kind of physical creation and a sound. And through that, that's how we get to that authenticity, is we hear those voices, that things that people have said to us, and go, is this really true? We challenge it. And we explore and we create new stories about ourselves and our voices and what we bring to the table. And that's what I've been doing, is I am unstorying, restorying, and stepping into a whole new, to me, it feels like a whole new professional identity. And it's been very interesting because other people know me as a particular story. So I had a wonderful friend who said, I just made friends with this amazing choir director in Chicago. I have to introduce you. This could be a great connection. I was like, oh, you don't know. So this is where I'm leaning now and spending my time. She was like, oh, awesome. I'll look for those kinds of people. And it wasn't a big deal. Yeah. It's that, oh, I'm storied in a particular way professionally to people. And I'm excited to post this because there's going to be some people who are like, wait, what? But what about your teaching? What about your conducting?
All that goes away. That's the other part. It's all there. I mean, you brought the worksheets, you had the plan, you had the, like the vision for how the session was going to go. Like all of the stuff connects. And I feel like coming to the authenticity part, you grow up hearing, this is what you should do, this is how you should be successful, and then this is what you shouldn't do, or don't do this, don't do that, don't speak like that, don't dress like that, don't, and I feel like in my life right now, I'm kind of like kicking that stuff around, but it's so much a part of my narrative right now. Like me actively, vocally, verbally, publicly rebelling all of the things that I was told I was supposed to be, do, and have, And talking to you, we were talking about some of like my possible keynote topics, right? And my usual go-tos are working through the trauma that I've gone through. And we talked about that. And you're like, you're leading with your trauma. Is that really how, you want to be? And part of my brain is already thinking like, I'm so much further beyond those stories, but those are the stories that I'm stuck with right now. And how can I take them from forefront to putting them to the side, thanking them for their service, and bringing in new stories about myself, about my worth. So I'm just curious, when it comes to authenticity, whether we're keynote speakers or just people moving in the world, and there's narratives that we're talking about to ourselves, how can we like restructure? That was a big question, but yeah.
I think the first thing that's important to say is that we are not one thing. So Tara, in this moment, are we ever perfectly authentic? No, but I feel authentic. right?
Yeah.
The way I'm dressed today feels like me. I've got all my books behind me. That feels authentic. I'm speaking in an authentic way. But me in my sweats, hanging out with my husband and my dog and my cat and watching TV and just laughing and swearing, that's authentic me too.
Yeah.
And me on stage with a ball gown singing high seas, that can be authentic me too. And me playing tennis all sweaty and like rah and hit the ball, that can be authentic me too. So we can have multiple authentic selves depending on context. And you know, we're wonderful diamonds. And it just depends on what is it, the facets? Is that what that is? All the different sides? It depends which one I turn toward you in this moment, but they're all me. So when we talk about authenticity, I think I've heard people speak of it like I need to be the authentic self, and it's one self. And I do think there's underlying Tara Ness, right? Amanda Ness that is there. But yes, as you're saying, sometimes the narratives that people have shared with us get tangled up in that, and we hear those voices very clearly. And they speak to us and tell us what we should do, what we could do. And that gets tangled up in there, the shoulds and the coulds. And there's so many books written about that, right? Of unpacking those things and sorting through and figuring out what serves me and what doesn't. What things are smart and move me forward, and what things are holding me back that make me feel less, that are not allowing me to engage with my calling. So looking at the usability and the value of those little things that are being said in your head. Sometimes those things are really big and we need to get help from other people to unpack and heal them. Sometimes we need to go to mental health professionals. Sometimes we need to go to spiritual advisors. Sometimes we need to be around people who have also been through a similar struggle. So some of these things we can kind of journey through on our own, and some of them we need help and support. So I always just want to say to people, you know, as you're unpacking stories, if this feels like a big thing you can't do alone, trust that instinct and find that support. That's huge. Because as I said, what I do is therapeutic in that the sharing of stories, but sometimes people will share stories and we'll take a beat and I'll ask them if they have other support as they're unpacking and coming to grips with these stories. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's an amazing thing to get support like that. But yeah, it's such an interesting mess, and it's a journey because we keep going, just like our voices, we change as people. And what meant a lot to us when we were young might not mean so much to us now, or suddenly we have all new tastes and interests. Things come to the forefront that, you know, something that somebody said, it was fine, and then all of a sudden it's made us mad. I think it's interesting to investigate why it suddenly made us mad. I think my writer journey started there because I was part of a project called Pat and Amelia, which was a mixed media chamber opera that about two women in Windsor, Ontario, a photographer and an opera singer. And I was approached to play the photographer. And there was some wonderful text that was written by Marty Gervais, who was the poet laureate of Windsor, who knew her. And all of a sudden I got involved and I was like, we're going to explode this and make a whole opera. So then we had the two characters and it just became much, and it became chaos. And we started talking to people about it. We were doing a long table discussion, panel discussion. And Marty was talking about how I had helped him transform his prose into lyrics for part of the songs. And he said, and you know what? She's not even a writer. And I think he meant it as a compliment. Like, look at the skill for somebody who's not even this thing. And I was devastated. This visceral reaction of sadness and anger. And what do you mean I'm not a writer?
Right.
That was that I still hold that moment because I was just suddenly so mad and I was suddenly so hurt. How could you not see me as a writer? Well, why would he? I was not engaging in writerly things. But this was, like I said, it was my secret friend. It was my secret part of me. I think that was the beginning of this whole thing of, wait a minute, maybe I really truly am in my heart someone who engages with narratives, someone who writes them down, who speaks them, who engages with others. So yeah, those little emotional pops can be really interesting aha moments.
Oh my goodness. I can totally understand that. The secret loves, the secret crafts, the secret hobbies. And that's part of the reason why I am glad that you're telling your story, and I've pushed you so hard since the day we met to jump on the Let's Glow show, because so many of us are finding ourselves in spaces where we should be, not where we want to be, or we're putting on a facade outside in public, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then we feel obligated to continue to do it because we've built something, or we have a reputation, or we've gone so many years doing it and it's expected of us. And part of the reason, not part of the reason, but one of the reasons why I wanted you to tell your story is because you can do whatever the fuck you want. That's the part. Like, you can be whoever you want to be. You can change at a drop of a hat. And other people's opinions of that have nothing to do with you, as the famous quote goes. But this is important. And talking about those secret loves and those secret crafts and those secret hobbies are probably the things you should be doing the most of in the reality of things, you know, like performing and being creative. And I feel like I was constantly pushed towards management. Like, you should be a manager, you should be a director, you should be a producer, you should be a this. Like, I went to school for TV and broadcasting, and they're like, okay, you're gonna be great behind the camera, you know. And when I dropped out when I dropped out the second time, I started taking acting classes, and I was told in the classes all the time, you'd be casted so much as a side character. You'd be great as a supporting role. You would be amazing at this supporting thing. Constantly told, you'd be great on the side. You'd be great behind the camera. And I'm like, I don't want to be that.
Good for you.
I'm really told why. They're like, oh, because of your size, the way you look, the way you sound, the way you show up. You're giving best friend. You're giving supporting character. You're giving mama. You're giving auntie. You're giving big sis, whatever. And I'm like, does that mean that I shouldn't have a desire to lead on stage, to take a main character role, to do whatever the case may be?
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I shied away from acting, because I'm like, wow, not only am I getting pigeonholed, but I'm also believing that this is true.
Yeah.
And this is where I should be. And I will continue to get roles where I should be. And I should be so lucky, because most actors don't get roles, right? So I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but you know.
Yeah. It's a strange mix, right? Because we feel called to do a thing, we're very passionate, and we feel that we should have the right to go out and do that thing. And then there's a society, a culture, an institution. So in opera, we call it Fach. It's a German word, and it's voice type. And you have a very particular voice type, and that's what you're born with. As I said, you can't trade it out. So you have soubrettes. So soubrettes are the lightest sopranos, and they typically play the young girl, the innocent, the maid. And so no matter what your personality is, if you are that voice type, the majority of your roles, unless it's a newly composed thing in the traditional repertoire, those are the roles you're going to play.
Sure.
I always wanted to be the queen who dies, right? I wanted the big dramatic dying roles. I am a few voice types lighter than that. So I am a lyric coloratura soprano. And so I play the fun, smart, quirky woman who usually pulls one over on a guy. And that fits, that's fine. But I really wanted to die. And I only got to die once. And it was fun. But in that, those are structures. And so you could find new composers who are writing operas that allow your character to do different things. You could write your own production. You could, find an opera company in a smaller house that's willing to let your voice type sing a particular role. But there are some restraints in that world, as an example. And similarly, in the big scheme, if I love, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a thing. If I love knitting little hats for bunnies, I love bunnies and hats. It just brings me joy. I know I made up something. I love knitting hats for bunnies. It just brings me joy. That's what I want to do with all of my time. I've just realized that today in this moment, I am not able to do the logistics of life and support myself by knitting little hats for bunnies. So at this point, I need to figure out how I'm going to live in the now and get myself toward the future that I want.
Mhm.
Right? People are laughing at me. What do you mean you want to knit hats for bunnies? They don't
Right.
see it. And I think you were saying that secret hidden talent. I think a lot of us have the knitting hats for bunnies, whatever your version of that is.
Yes.
And it takes a while for people to understand some of those things. They're like, what? You can't, what? How? So, in order for me to get to the point where I can spend more time doing that, because that's what I love, it makes me laugh, it makes other people have joy. I don't know how the bunnies feel. That's, but we won't.
Yeah.
Maybe they feel warm. I don't know. So I have to keep living my today life and I have to be living my tomorrow life at the same time. And that's a lot. It's hard to be doing what I need to do to pay the bills and keep going with what my responsibilities, and also be finding the time to knit the hats, figure out how are people marketing these things? How do I get myself out there? Oh, maybe I'm going to do YouTube and just show my bunnies with hats, and then people will be excited about it. How do I have time to prepare all those things?
Mhm.
So I think a lot of times that's where people get stuck. There's the two things is one, saying, yes, this is what I really want to do. And two, I need to build a life that will allow me to get there, but it may not happen tomorrow.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of time and energy and faith in yourself. And I think that's why that community is so huge. But again, it's that storying thing. It comes back to narrative. Can I see my future Tara with her successful, bunny hat knitting business? Is it something I do in conjunction with my everyday job? So I'm going to keep my managerial job, but I might not be giving the extra that I used to. I'm going to show up and do my job, and I save my heart, my energy, my extra energy for this thing that I love. One of the questions, sorry, I'm taking this. Do you want me to just keep? All right, I'm going to keep going. One of the things that drives me nuts, and I think we need to examine this in our culture, is we meet people, we find out their name, and usually the next question is, what do you do? And what we usually mean, or how people usually interpret that, is how do you pay the bills?
Yeah.
And it becomes a judgment thing. So if I say that I'm a lawyer, that means one thing. If I say that I knit hats for bunnies, you get another picture, right?
Right.
And sometimes what we do to pay the bills is not who we are as people. It's something that we do well and it pays the bills, but our heart is somewhere else.
Mhm.
So I think we need to change the culture of that question. One of my favorite questions to ask is, so what projects do you have a project that you're working on right now that you love? What's a project you're really excited about?
I like that.
And that opens the door for however you want to start the conversation, right?
Yeah.
They, oh, a house. I'm working on my house, something, something. So, oh, my
Yeah.
nephew's learning how to use remote control cars and we're doing that together. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start answering that question differently. So I've encouraged a lot of friends, and I need to start doing it too, because I'm there now, is do you want to know how I pay the bills, or do you want to know what I really am excited about?
Yeah.
And I
I
think
always say, I always ask, what are you into? And it usually throws people off. They're like,
Mhm.
what do you mean? I'm like, what do you like? What brings you joy? What do you like to do for fun? What do you play? How do you like to play? And it either turns people off, which are not the people for me, which
Mhm.
I learned right away. I'm like, oh great, filter that person out. This person's really transactional, and that's okay. Or it turns people on and they're like, oh my gosh, I like to do this. That's like my favorite thing. Like
Yeah.
oh my gosh, and then just this word vomit. And I'm like, okay, great. Now we have things to like have a real connection about. But I want to talk about the hats with bunnies thing really quick because I think you bring up a great point. And I think it kind of ties this whole conversation together. There's this version of you that is out in the world. There's this facet of your diamond that's shining brightly for the most people to see. And then there's these other parts of your diamond. I love this analogy. I'm going to use it for the rest of my life. Other parts of your diamond that people can't see, but are shining just as brightly. They're just not facing the light at that moment. Right. And this transition to this is your work time, this is your hats with bunny time, and getting it to go like this, right? This is this phase one, I think you're kind of in. You're in this like transitional space. Like, how do I turn the diamond, right?
Mhm.
But all of those parts are connected and you're learning the skills. That's the part I think I needed to learn, is that all of the jobs that I have are not to keep me away from my craft. In my last role, it was like, oh my God, the second I quit is going to be the day that I'm successful, entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah. And now I find myself at Bamboo where I have a supportive team. They know what I'm doing. I'm not keeping it a secret. That was the other part, was keeping it a secret in my last job, because anytime I shared my interest or my things, I would get shot down in a very like aggressive or passive aggressive or some kind of sideways way. And now I'm in a space where my boss knows what I'm doing outside of work, supports what I'm doing outside of work, doesn't reprimand me for being who I am. So that's a big thing. If you can find yourself in a position where you're able to be honest about what you're doing, helps. So long as everything you're doing is legal and has good values and morals, like great. So as long as you can just be like, hey, this is what I do, this is what I love. I never thought I could find myself in a position like that, but I did tell Amanda Luan, the founder of Bamboo, when we talk about the things that I'm passionate about, like the revamp and how it's growing and where it's going and what my dreams are. And some people would be like, oh, it's kind of dumb. Like, why would you tell your boss that? But I'm like, I'm now in a space where I don't have to hide, which is a huge emotional shift.
Mhm.
Returning the diamond, right?
Yeah.
She knows what my goals are. I told her, I was like, I might, in my back of my mind, maybe I have another job or two, but I told her my goal was for Bamboo to be my last non-entrepreneurial job. When I leave and transition out of Bamboo one day, it will be to transition into full-time revamp. That is the dream. Or
Right.
full-time Creative Fairy Godmother, LLC, whatever that looks like. But in the previous role, I was fighting it. We're fighting for opposition. We're opposite sides of the magnet, right?
Yeah.
Everything I do has to be exactly opposite of everything I do outside. Now I'm like, okay, these things are working in tandem. The things that I'm learning at Bamboo are actively helping me in my job, right? So it's, instead of it being like, this is what I do during work and this is what I do outside of work, now it's, this is what I do outside of work and this is what I do at work. They're both similar and we can help each other, and I can learn from the things on both ends and share them on both sides. I feel like that's a huge shift. And so if you're in your job right now and you're like, I'm knitting hats for bunnies and my boss would never understand, can you learn systems and operations? Can you learn from their marketing strategy? Can you learn from the IT department? Can you learn, what can you learn to transition your dream job into the full-time job while you're getting paid to do it? So I
Yes.
always tell like my colleagues, my friends, I'm like, this is paid education. We're getting paid to learn and we're learning on the job. So I'm getting money, I'm learning, and I'm immediately applying it to my work outside of work. So I think it's a emotional shift. But if you're in a transitional space, like lean into the space that you're in, is what I guess I'm trying to say. It's already been an hour. Crazy. So I have a couple quick questions before we go.
Sure.
Where can people find you on the internet?
So I am currently building. So I have a new BlueSky account, shifting over into that. So that is just starting to be built, and that's under Narrative Spring. And I also have my LinkedIn that is under my name. Again, I'm revamping that, starting to do that. Instagram also is Narrative Spring. Again, revamping that in a new direction. And my goal is website within the next couple months. So yeah, still building. So keep an eye out. I will be in and around, and I am also for those watching who are part of Bamboo. I'm in and around Bamboo. I'm actually doing a talk at the beginning of February, which is going to be talking about a storied approach to planning and accountability, which is similar to my work that I did with Write the Damn Dissertation, of how do we story our to-do list in a way that keeps us moving on it and, facing the things that we've been avoiding for a few months. And every day we just transfer that one thing to the next day and again and again. So, yeah.
I love it. We'll put the links below, and if you change the links, I'll change the links. So don't
That'd be
worry.
great. So if I get the website, I'll give it to you. Maybe we can update this video. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. So we got the business out of the way.
Sure.
What is your last piece of advice for people in the creative space, people in the transitional space? What do you call to share before we go?
I think that if you feel a calling to create something, to bring something into the world, whether it's a product or an idea or a community or whatever it is, I think this is a good time to bring those things forward because we need the things of passion. We need the things of community. We need the things of love. We need stories of all different kinds of people and their journeys and their experiences out in the world so we can break the idea that there's one ideal way to be and there's one ideal way to live. And if you have a Knitting Bunnies for Hats and you just love that, you don't have to go after that's all I do with my life. If you are happiest doing that for 4 hours a week and you keep your job, but that brings you joy, embrace those 4 hours. That's still doing the thing. It doesn't mean that it's less just because you're not paying the bills with it. There's no shame in that. And I meet so many people who say, well, I would never be able to turn that into what I do for a living, so I shouldn't do it at all.
Mm.
And that's not how it has to work. Whatever you love, find your space to do it. If you love to sing, for example, I've worked with a lot of singers, and you had a dream of being the next pop star, but now you're 55 and it's too late for me. It's never too late to sing. Go find a space, go do karaoke, go teach yourself guitar, write some songs and do an open mic night, join a choir. Find a way to do what you love in the way that feels authentic to you. Don't feel pressured to do it any other way. And if you want to take it all the way, awesome. No, it's a long journey. Get your narratives out about all of this stuff. Get yourself a community. Get yourself some time and energy and space to do it. Fight for that tooth and nail to do it. And be patient because it really is worth it. It really is.
Tara. I'm so glad you said it because I feel like on my show, we usually talk to people in their entrepreneurial space. So most people have transitioned their hats for bunnies to business, right? But just because you love it doesn't mean you have to sell it. Just because you love it doesn't mean you have to market it. Just because you love it doesn't mean you have to build a brand strategy around it. And I don't think we talk about that enough. Like if you love something, it doesn't have to become a business. And if you're a creative person, it doesn't mean it has to be the business. And so I'm really glad you said it because shows like mine, we're talking to entrepreneurs. Shows like there are so many podcasts out there where people talk, entrepreneurial, they talk shop, they talk this, they talk that. But not enough we talk about the thing that we like to do just for funsies. Like I like to sew and everybody's like, so when are you going to launch a line? And when can I buy your products? And I'm like, I don't have the time nor the energy to make one full piece for me in a season, let alone make one for all of you in different sizes. This is something that I want to learn. I'm called to learn, but I don't want to make it a business. It's something I want to do in my pajamas, at home, in my office, watching my Disney movies in peace, right? And that's okay. And it doesn't have to become, I don't have to become the next Vera Wang, right? Which I think we need to talk about that more. So I am really, really grateful for you not only like moving through I'm not ready to talk about what I'm doing to being here on the Let's Glow show. I'm so, so grateful that you're here, that we met, that you're in my life, that you're in my social circle. Like your energy, your presence, your compassion, your passion is infectious and beautiful. And I love to see it every single time I see you or hear from you, or whatever the case may be. So thank you for being.
Ditto. You're amazing. Thank you so much for existing in the world and bringing all of your light and fairy godmotherness, because you just inspire so many people just by walking by. You connect people. It's just naturally what you do. It's just really magical. So I'm honored to be here today. And thanks to anyone who is listening.
I appreciate you so much, Tara. I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much. Again, like I said on the last show, don't forget, like if you're local, you're in Metro Detroit area, you're in Michigan, you're somewhere else in the country, in the world, whatever, if you're watching the show, these people are real. We're real. Hit us up. Send us a message. If you want to talk to Tara about narrative, about singing, about performing, about speaking, let us know. I'll make sure that you two connect. And one big thing that I've been thinking of a lot about this week as we go into the swap weekend, which, by the way, if you are in the Metro Detroit area, the Clothing Swap Festival is this Saturday. We have 565 people registered, which is like blowing my mind right now, but it's missing you. So please come. But something I'm thinking about going into the weekend is, how do we get this like interaction, the momentum that we have online with the swaps, the Instagram like posts and the connections and the tags, how do we offline that? With TikTok going down for a couple days and seeing some of the things that we're seeing, I just want to find a way for us to connect more in person, because there's a magic that happens and that ripples from seeing one another, touching one another, hugging one another, talking about this in real life. So connect with Tara, send her a message, grab a coffee with her, grab tea with her, and I'm encouraging you to do that, because if you're watching, you probably watch a lot of podcasts. And my suggestion is to take that podcast into the world. That's how I found my first life coach, by the way. I heard him on a podcast. I reached out and then I hired him and I worked with him for 6 months and it was amazing. But if you feel called to do it, send the message. Don't be afraid. And that's just like a blanket statement about everything. So thank you. I'll get off my soapbox about that now, but thank you so much for being here, Tara. Again, thank you. Thank you for watching. Hopefully we see you this Saturday. If not, we do it every single quarter and we do the show every single Wednesday. So thank you so much. It's Amanda Sweet with the Let's Glow Show, and we will see you next week.
Bye.